Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton join millions of Americans voting this election day. We have live team coverage.
The rallies have all finished, but the future of the Senate and the White House hang in the balance. I'm Jason Calvi in Battleground, Pennsylvania, where these could be decided.
Voters are casting their ballots here in the battleground state of New Hampshire. I'm Wyatt Goolsby. Coming up, we'll have coverage of a tight Senate race divided by the issue of funding for Planned Parenthood, plus 4 electoral votes are up for grabs for the presidency.
Moral dilemma. Some voters see the issue of physician-assisted suicide on their ballots. Stay with us for a special live Election Day edition of EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, November 8th, 2016. Good evening from Washington, D.C. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Bryan Paton.
And I'm Lauren Ashburn, reporting live from our political desk. In the next 30 minutes, we will bring you comprehensive coverage of the election from a Catholic point of view. And we will be joined by several guests, including former presidential candidate Rick Santorum. He's going to provide analysis throughout the show.
And our coverage extends overseas tonight. Mary Shovlin joins us later from Rome, looking at how the election is viewed outside the United States. Most polling places are still open at this hour, but not for long. The latest national average of polls has Clinton with a slight lead, Lauren.
But there is a lot more at stake tonight other than just the presidency. And who better to join me now to talk about the political landscape than you, Rick Santorum. You have been in the presidential seat. You one of 17 at the beginning of this race. You've been a senator from Pennsylvania. Tell me what you think is going to happen tonight.
It's really a question of whether these polls, which clearly show Hillary Clinton with a lead, a sufficient lead to be able to win the Electoral College, whether these polls are accurately, catching what Donald Trump says is the wave, is a new coalition. I can tell you, at least in talking to some of the people that I have around the country, voter turnout is very, very heavy, much above the 2012 election. So that is an indication that he's bringing new people out. So the question is there a new electorate out there that's going to change the landscape, or is this really just more of a traditional election?
Well, let's take a look at some video. The candidates hit the polls earlier today.
What did you vote for?
Tough decision.
Donald Trump, with his wife Melania at his side, voted this morning saying tough decision. He was at a rowdy polling place in a public school in New York City. And this is Hillary Clinton's second time running for president, but it is the first time she was able to cast a vote for herself in the general election. She and her husband voted in Chappaqua, New York, with dozens of supporters chanting, "Madam President." Rick, one of the key states is Pennsylvania, where you were senator for 12 years. The Catholic population there is 24%. What are the key issues that Catholics care about the most?
Well, I think most Catholics obviously are concerned about the life issue, and the most important issue there is the Supreme Court. And if there's anything I heard as I traveled around, that the Supreme Court is a huge, huge issue. And look, I think the issue of character also matters a lot, and that's been a sticking point for a lot of folks. They care about the court, they care about some of the policies that Donald Trump has been advocating, but they're also concerned about some of the character issues, frankly, of both candidates.
On both sides,
yeah.
Right, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Well, one of the most hotly contested Senate races is in Pennsylvania. Senator Pat Toomey, who won by just 80,000 votes last time, is battling environmentalist Katie McGinty. Jason Calvi has spent many days on the campaign trail in Pennsylvania. He joins us.
The polls close here in Pennsylvania in just under 2 hours. The future of the Senate's pro-life majority hanging in the balance. Republican Senator Pat Toomey hopes to celebrate right here tonight.
Our Lady of the Assumption Catholic Church in the Philadelphia suburb of Wayne. A polling place where Democrat Katie McGinty votes for herself for U.S. Senate.
I think of my dear departed mom and dad, and I just say I hope I've made them proud today.
She's facing Republican pro-life Senator Pat Toomey.
The differences between myself and Katie McGinty, between a Republican-controlled Senate and a Democrat-controlled Senate, are very stark indeed.
The Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation passed out 500,000 of these pro-life voters' guides and also these flyers showing the difference between Toomey, who voted to defund Planned Parenthood,
and McGinty.
I think all of our rights and privileges obviously are held in the Supreme Court, and whether it's women's rights or LGBT rights or civil rights, all of that is at stake and on the ballot.
And on the presidential race, 20 electoral votes are up for grabs here in the Keystone State. Senator Tim Kaine, the vice presidential nominee on the Democratic side, says if Hillary Clinton wins this state, she'll clinch the victory. Lauren?
And what do you think those chances are, Jason, that Hillary Clinton will win the state and potentially drag along Ms. McGinty?
Well, the Real Clear Politics average of polls beforehand was putting her up by just under 2 points, the average of polls here in the state of Pennsylvania. It's the last time they picked a Republican for president was back in 1988, George Bush the first. Lauren?
Okay, Jason Calvi, you've talked with a lot of voters. What are they saying?
Well, definitely some Democrats optimistic that once again the state will go blue. But what I did hear from both Republicans and Democrats was really the unknown. They really don't know what's going to happen come tonight as these polls come in after 8 o'clock here in Pennsylvania.
All right, Jason, we'll check back with you later in the show. Thank you very much. Rick, you saw those flyers, you saw all the Get Out the Vote guides. Do those really make a difference, pointing out the pro-life versus the not pro-life?
I think, yeah, they do. And it's really essential that these pro-life groups get that out into the churches so people at least know. That, unfortunately, doesn't mean they're necessarily going to vote that way. But at least they have to deal with their conscience when they go in and vote for someone who is against life and who will put a Supreme Court justice in there that will, change the definition of marriage and maybe even, push euthanasia. That's sort of the next thing coming down in many states.
We'll be talking about that later.
So
yeah.
I mean, this is a serious issue, and so it's vitally important that they're informed. Their decision is their own.
Okay. Brian, the other state we are covering is New Hampshire, where the Senate race is even tighter.
That's right, Lauren. Democrats need to win a handful of seats to take control of the U.S. Senate. They are looking to New Hampshire for one of them. Wyatt Goolsbee spent the last couple of days with candidates and voters in the Granite State. He's joining us live from Concord, New Hampshire tonight. Wyatt?
Brian, it has been a whirlwind 48 hours for Republican Senator Kelly Ayotte. She has been, at least for the last 24 hours, made 30 stops, and that was before she voted early this morning. She says that she is optimistic she can win, but realizes this is a tight race. Ayotte is facing off against the Democratic governor, Maggie Hassan, and all polls indicate this race is neck and neck. Voters came out in force across the battleground state of New Hampshire. The race here is one of a half a dozen that will determine which party controls the Senate. The incumbent, Republican Senator Kelly Ayotte, cast her ballot in Nashua.
Today is about the Senate race and who's going to be New Hampshire's voice to represent the people of the state and to be that strong independent voice to get things done for our people and what we need to get done.
But Ayotte faces tough competition. Maggie Hassan has been governor since 2012. She's getting support from Michelle Obama and Hillary Clinton. She's also backed by Planned Parenthood and has vowed to stand up for what she calls abortion rights.
I think she's done a pretty good job as governor. I think she's got a pretty good record.
Others disagree. Lifelong Republicans say Ayotte is the best choice.
I voted for her before. I think she's been doing all right.
Ayotte has come under fire from Democrats for voting to defund Planned Parenthood. She says taxpayer dollars should go to other women's health care clinics. Most polls here in New Hampshire close at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, but that varies. There are some locations that stay open as late as 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Brian?
Wyatt, Senator Ayotte says she placed a write-in vote for Mike Pence for president. Did she say why?
She would not answer that question directly today, Brian. She just said that she's addressed that issue before. About a month ago, she did take a stand saying she could not support or publicly support Donald Trump's inappropriate comments about women. Since then, she has been distancing herself from Donald Trump, and she says, though, she still supports her party. Brian?
Wyatt Goolsbee in Concord, New Hampshire. We'll be back with you later, Wyatt. So, Lauren, races in New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, and several other states could determine who controls the Senate next year.
Yeah, and the white Catholic vote is critical in these battleground states, isn't it, Rick?
Absolutely. I mean, New Hampshire is another example of the heavy Catholic state where Kelly is very clearly pro-life and her opponent is not. I mean, you have the same thing in a governor's race there where it looks like the Republican is trending a little bit ahead. Looks like Trump is actually doing okay. I mean, New Hampshire might be a surprise tonight. It could go all Republican, but that white Catholic vote is going to be
is
huge
critical
in determining it.
You know, there's a chance the Senate could be tied with 50 Democrats, 50 Republicans. The vice president would be the tiebreaker. You know, that's why we're watching these Senate races. But what happens if that does happen to issues like religious liberty and abortion?
Well, I mean, there's two issues. Number one is the Supreme Court. So if Hillary Clinton is the president, and we don't have Republicans don't have 51 votes. If they have 50, that means that the vice president actually can vote and break the tie, which will be Tim Kaine. So getting 51 is really critical. 50 isn't good enough. 51 is critical if Clinton wins, and that's for Supreme Court nominations. If you have 51 Republican senators, you really put a little bit of a limit on Hillary Clinton and her ability to put someone like an Elena Kagan or Sonia Sotomayor, because they won't get the votes necessary to be able to be confirmed. So,
but they will if Democrats are in charge.
If Democrats are in charge, then she has full line to do whatever she wants to do.
You heard Wyatt say there that Kelly Ayotte wrote in Mike Pence. Is that a problem with Republicans in general?
I think it's certainly a problem with a lot of the Trump supporters, and Donald Trump has actually gained a lot of ground up in New Hampshire over the last few weeks, and the same thing with Pat Toomey. Pat Toomey has been less than enthusiastic
about Donald
Trump, and I think it's probably hurt both of them in a lot of areas of their state. Maybe helped them on the margins in some, but I think in the end, when you go against your own party's candidate, you're not helping that candidate, and in the end, you're probably not helping yourself either.
And you're helping the other candidate,
well, that's
most
by,
likely,
obviously,
right?
If you're not
Obviously,
helping
by
yourself,
default,
you're
right?
helping them.
That's right.
Right.
Okay, well, Bryan and I are going to have more on election 2016 in just a few more minutes.
Coming up, the election draws interest overseas. We visit a watch party in Rome. And concern for Catholics, where they face the issue of assisted suicide. Pope Francis addresses the desire for power at Mass this morning at Casa Santa Marta, where he lives. The Holy Father in his homily says Jesus teaches us that if we wish to be leaders, we must serve others first and foremost. Thanks for joining us for our special election night edition of EWTN News Nightly. Mary Shovlin joining us from Rome tonight, where they're watching the elections at the U.S. Embassy. Mary?
Hello, Brian. We're downtown Rome, where the U.S. Embassy to Italy and the U.S. Embassy to the Holy See are co-hosting an election party watching event. We're about 1,700 people here, a great mix of Italian and Americans. And while a lot of people have their opinion on which candidate may win or which candidate they voted for, they all can agree that this is a very important election for the United States.
The United States is the biggest economy in the world. It's very influential in world affairs. And I think everybody will be watching to see which direction the election will be taking us for the next 4 years.
Well, there's great interest on these elections here in Italy. I believe it's one of the most followed elections ever.
And I've been living overseas for the last 22 years, and so I've made it an important part of my ritual every 4 years to vote in the presidential elections.
We just heard a few moments ago from Ambassador John Phillips, who was our ambassador to Italy, and I thought he underlined something that we're all feeling in this room tonight, where past elections have been about hope and change. He hoped this one would be as well, instead of about fear and what may come next, but keeping that foundation and the American spirit. And even though we're here in Rome, that American spirit is alive and well. Back to you, Brian.
Mary, we will check back with you again later tonight. And Lauren, people around the world have followed this campaign and are likely watching it very closely tonight.
Might be an understatement, Brian. Many have said this is the most important election of our time. Rick Santorum and I are now joined by Bob Cusack, the editor-in-chief of The Hill. Bob, welcome to our happy trio.
Historic night, no matter
Nice
what
to see you. Nice to see you. Tell us a little bit about, we've been talking about down ballot races. Let's talk about the effect of these down ballot races, if we can. And first of all, where do you think we are right now?
Well, I think the Senate is a toss-up. I mean, you've got Republicans have a very difficult map, have to defend 24 seats compared to Democrats, 10 seats. So the map favors Democrats, without a doubt. However, this is not a slam dunk for the Democrats. There are some races that are very close. In Indiana, former Senator Evan Bayh, I think, is the underdog in his race against Congressman Todd Young. But in other races like Illinois and Wisconsin, Democrats certainly have an edge. I think New Hampshire is also a toss-up. Some of these races may not be decided for a couple days.
For a couple days. We've seen that happen before. Rick, religious liberty is really under fire here. EWTN and others like the Little Sisters of the Poor are suing the Obama administration so that they don't have to offer abortions as part of their health care plan. If Clinton wins, what do you see happening?
I think she'll continue President Obama's assault. And thankfully, the House of Representatives will certainly stay Republican. But without the United States Senate, it just makes it harder to stop the Obama administration. I mean, the courts have done a reasonably good job, but again, 4 more years of liberal justices being put on those courts, not just the Supreme Court, but other courts, those decisions will start to reflect the view that the government can tell religious organizations what they can believe in, and that's you don't want to talk about the left talking about tolerance. They're tolerant except when religious organizations violate their moral code, and they have no tolerance for that.
The other part of this whole election that we have seen is that things have become very nasty, Bob, and they've become nasty within the Republican Party, between the Republican Party and the Democrats. What do you think after all of this is going to help everyone heal this division that we have seen?
I think it's going to be very difficult because whether Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton wins, I think this nastiness, honestly, is going to be continuing. With Hillary Clinton, she's been at war with the left, and we've had allegations that DNC and emails that WikiLeaks released that the fix was in for Hillary Clinton. So the left is kind of looking at her very warily. And also, Donald Trump. I mean, the party is divided about him. So I do think that usually after elections, we all exhale, and the parties say, maybe we can work together. We're not exhaling.
Right.
2020, 2018 starts tomorrow.
Great. Thank you so much. We'll be back with both of these fine fellows. Bryan, there are many ballot initiatives that will affect Catholics.
Yes, sadly, pre-election polls indicate Colorado will become the 6th state to legalize physician-assisted suicide. Proposition 106 would give terminally ill people the legal right to end their life with the help of a physician. Opponents say it would encourage insurance companies and doctors to favor life-ending drugs over more costly hospice or palliative care. Polls show broad support for the initiative, but a Denver Catholic healthcare professional believes voters are misinformed.
There's a great deal of misinformation out there about what physician-assisted suicide involves, and the greatest of those is the implication that if a person is to go through this physician-assisted suicide, there'll be no pain, there'll be no suffering.
Dr. Chad Pecknold, Associate Professor of Theology at the Catholic University of America, is with us. Chad, supporters of this kind of legislation call it compassionate. Why is this troubling, though, for us as Catholic voters?
Well, it's troubling because we recognize this as a false compassion. It's a false compassion which offers, under the guise of compassion, something which is actually depriving human dignity, the sacredness of human life, that this isn't in our control, it's in God's control.
The compassion that Jesus exhibited is sharing in the passion, the suffering, rather than cutting it off.
Sharing in suffering and experiencing the full range of human life as God intended us to experience it, including our suffering at the end of life. We want our senses to participate in the suffering of Christ and offer it up, but we also recognize that this is something which puts doctors in a very difficult position, honoring their Hippocratic oath. They have to address patients with death rather than with health, and that's something that we also care about.
On another issue, 4 states are considering medical use of marijuana. 5 states, including Massachusetts, recreational use of marijuana. The Archdiocese of Boston, the Knights of Columbus have funded ads opposing this. What are the moral issues involved in marijuana use, especially recreational?
Yeah, recreational is a special case because there's no medicinal purpose for dulling the senses. Catholic social teaching talks about the problem with all drugs is that it creates social structures of sin. And we can see that. We can see the way in which drug use really encourages a lot of different practices that are unanticipatable. And what we really want is to create a good society, not a society that's trying to escape from reality.
There are a lot of morally conflicted voters. What's your thought on how we can really come to grips with morals in this election?
Well, certainly by facing reality directly and aiming at the good. I think we've seen a lot of voting against candidates in this election, and I think what the church directs us to do is to have a well-formed conscience, a conscience which recognizes that it needs good formation, to aim at the good, to aim at the common good, and to choose candidates who uphold that and to avoid evil.
Dr. Chad Pecknold, the Catholic University of America. Thanks. We'll have you back at 9.
Great.
Up next, we show you where the election stands now and preview stories we're working on for our live broadcast tonight at 9. On Tuesday, November 8th, EWTN News Nightly live election night coverage continues. I'm Bryan Paton.
And I'm Lauren Ashburn. We have reporters in Pennsylvania and New Hampshire.
Yeah, Lauren, this is one of those key battleground states, Pennsylvania. Republican Senator Pat Toomey fighting to hold his seat. He hasn't said if he's going to be voting for Donald Trump, but we do know he'll be voting in the next 20 minutes. One of the other key battleground states is New Hampshire. That's where our Wyatt Goolsby is tonight. Wyatt?
Thanks, Jason. Yes, we're in the state capital of New Hampshire, and we are following one of the closest Senate races in the country, and it's one that's divided based on the life issue. We'll have more on that as the polls here, most polls in New Hampshire, close in less than an hour. We'll have a lot more on this race coming up at 9 o'clock. Back to you, Lauren, at our political desk.
Thank you, Wyatt. As we come to the end of our broadcast, let's do some handicapping. We are soon going to know when the East Coast polls close and what kind of race this is. And when we come back at 9, if Clinton wins, if we know anything, and New Hampshire and North Carolina, that's pretty a bad sign. That's going to be a very bad sign for Donald Trump. And, you know, who thought that Michigan would even be in play? And once we find out about Michigan, that could also be a very bad sign, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, remember that President Obama and Hillary Clinton just yesterday were in Michigan. And if you had told me that a year ago, I'd be like, wow, the Democrats are in trouble. Certainly, Hillary Clinton is the favorite. She has more pass to 270. But Donald Trump does have a couple pass to get there. So, but he's got to run the table. He's got to win every close match. It's like winning a lot of games in overtime. He's got to win basically all of them. And I think he's got to win North Carolina. I think he's got to win Florida. And he's got to steal one of these blue-leaning states like a Michigan.
Rick, a lot of people didn't think Donald Trump would get this far. Pundits wrote him off. No one thought he was within striking distance. And now, at the end of this, he will most likely have 40 million votes at a minimum. What does that mean for the face of the Republican Party going forward, no matter who wins?
Contrary to what I think most Republican leaders believe, I think Donald Trump's candidacy, the issues that he's highlighted and the way he's done, not the way he's done it, but the issues he's highlighted actually is a path forward for the party. It's much more focused on working men and women, those who are struggling in our society. It's a message that's more populist that says we care about you. We're not just about the employers. We're not about Wall Street and the corporations. And if you look at the past, that's how the Republican Party has been sort of pigeonholed. Donald Trump is going to do better among blue collar, lower educated people than any Republican, maybe since Ronald Reagan. And that's the path forward. That's why Michigan is in play and Pennsylvania is in play. And if we hadn't had the character issue problems that were coming up, I have no doubt in my mind that he would have won Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin. He'd have run the table in the industrial heartland of this country. So it's a path forward and one that I'm excited about because we need preferential option for the poor. We need to start looking at those who are struggling in our society and have answers for them.
All right, Rick Santorum, former presidential candidate, thank you so much for joining us. Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief of The Hill, it's been a pleasure. Thanks. Well, Bryan, one thing we haven't talked about this half hour is the doomsday scenario, or did we? If there is an electoral college tie, we're going to be also exploring that and many other scenarios coming up at 9 o'clock.
Our live election coverage continues at 9 Eastern. We'll have the latest results, more political analysis from a Catholic point of view. Until then, for Lauren Ashburn and our EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Bryan Patrick. God bless America as we close tonight, seeing some of Americans waiting in line to cast their ballots on this Election Day 2016.